So this is our practice test B. Now you have the practice test A online already. This is practice test B for chapter 3. And I just want to remind you that our test will not have word problems. So even though the practice test has word problems, we are not going to have word problems. So number one, we have 5x squared minus 6x minus 8 plus negative 2x squared minus 8x plus 9. Now, what happens in this situation is that students forget that this is addition. They forget that this is addition and they start wanting to multiply. They kind of want to start foiling. But pay attention to that plus sign right there because all we're doing is adding. That's all we're doing right here. Now, if I don't have anything to distribute, and that would be right here, or it would be a minus sign, and I don't have anything inside the parentheses that can be combined, then I can drop the parentheses altogether. So I have 5x squared minus 6x minus 8 plus negative 2x squared minus 8x plus 9. Okay? And now I combine like terms. Okay? So 5x squared is combined with negative 2x squared. And that gives me positive 3x squared. Okay. Negative 6x and negative 8x gives me negative 14x. Negative 8 and positive 9 gives me positive 1. Another mistake that some students make is then they start combining things that can't be combined. Okay? 3x squared and minus 14x can't be combined. Okay? Can I go to the next one? Okay. So number 2 is a little bit more challenging because it is subtraction. And that sometimes confuses us. Okay? So we have 3x squared plus 7x minus x to the third plus 5 minus this entire quantity, 9x squared minus 5x minus x to the third plus 7. Now, a couple of the things that confuse students on this particular type of problem is that our terms are not in decreasing order. So we've got x squared, then we have x, and then we have an x to the third. Okay, and that sometimes confuses students. But the other thing is that subtraction sign. This subtraction sign belongs to everything inside this polynomial. Everything. So we rewrite the first polynomial exactly the way that it is. Okay? Then we distribute our negative. Okay? What's negative and a negative for the 5x? Good. So that's going to be positive 5x. Then I have negative x to the third. Good. Okay? That x to the third is what typically gets students. Okay? Now I'm going to start with minus x to the third and positive x to the third because that's my highest exponent. Now, if you wrote it in an order that wasn't x squared, x, and your constant, it's not going to be wrong, but it is traditionally how the answer is put. It's traditionally put in the order, and that highest exponent is first. But in this situation, our negative x to the third and our positive x to the third disappears. They cancel out, so they're gone. So now I have 3x squared and negative 9x squared. That's going to be negative 6x squared. 7x and positive 5x is going to be 12x. And then I have a 5 and I have a negative 7. And that gives me negative 2. Okay? Now, we've been adding and subtracting, and then in number 3, we go back to multiplying. And a lot of students miss this one because they try to do more than what it's asking them to do. Okay, so I have 5x to the 5th, y to the 4th, and then negative 9, x to the 4th, y to the 1st, okay? So I'm not adding anything there. All of this is multiplication, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do 5 times negative 9. What is 5 times negative 9? Negative 45. Good. Then I have x to the 5th times x to the 4th. And when I am multiplying exponents like that, what do I do with those exponents? Add them. Good. And so I'm going to have x to the 9th. Okay? Then I have y to the 4th and y. What's that second y's exponent? 1. Excellent. So then I get y to the 5th. So my final answer here is negative 45, x to the 9th, y to the 5th. Now, today, a student was trying to FOIL that. They were trying to do FOIL with this particular problem. You only do FOIL when we have a binomial, and inside binomials, we have plus and minuses. Okay? Speaking of FOIL, we ready to FOIL? Okay, number 4. 3y minus 7 times 6y plus 1. Okay, 3y minus 7 times 6y plus 1. So, first, I multiply my two first terms together. 3 times 6 is 18. Y times y is y squared. Then I multiply my outer terms together. 3y times positive 1. My inner terms, negative 6 times 6y. Or, I'm sorry, negative 7 times 6y. Negative 7 times 6, negative 42. Is that right? Negative 42y. Negative 7 times 1 is negative 7. Now, what we have here is we have like terms, 3y and negative 42y. They can be combined, and I get negative 39y minus 7. Okay, for our next one, we are going to FOIL again. This one is different because this is actually the difference of perfect squares. So I have 13x plus 2, 13x minus 2. Now, we don't have to recognize that as difference of perfect squares when we're FOILing. However, we're about to start factoring, and when we factor, it is important that we're able to work backwards from a difference of perfect squares. Okay, so 13x times 13x is 169x squared. And if we have forgotten what 13 squared is, we can do 13 times 13. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, Then we have to put that placeholder right there. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. Okay? So then when I add everything together, I get 169. Okay, so 13 squared is 169, and then we have x squared. 13 times negative 2 is, or 13x times negative 2 is going to be negative 26x. 2 times 13x is positive 26x. 2 times negative 2 is minus 4. Okay, what happens to those middle two terms? They cancel. Okay? Now, because we're going to have to use this in just a second, I just want to kind of remind you about what difference of perfect squares means. Okay? 169 is a perfect square, x squared is a perfect square, and 4 is a perfect square. Okay? And you must have that subtraction sign right there. If you don't have the subtraction sign right there, it's not a difference of perfect squares. And that's more important when we are factoring. Okay? Can I go to the next one? Okay. Number 6. And now the directions say factor. Okay? So I have 5a to the third minus 25a squared plus 9a minus 45. How many terms do we have right here? How many terms? 4. So anytime that you have 4 terms, anytime that we have 4 terms, we are going to factor by grouping. Okay? That's just what we're going to do. We're going to factor by grouping. Factor by grouping. Okay? So what I do is I look at these first 2 terms right here, and I decide what's common to both of them. Okay? There is a 5 in both of them, and there is an a to the second power in both of them. So now I do 5 times what gives me 5? Good, 1. A squared times what gives me a to the third? Excellent. Okay. 5 times what gives me negative 25? Negative 5. Okay. A squared times 1 gives me a squared. So I am not going to write that down. Okay. Now, what comes out of 9a and negative 45? Good. It's just 9. Okay. And I'm left with a minus 5. Okay. So my final answer now is 5a squared plus 9. That's one of your factors. And a minus 5 is your other factor. The key thing that's happening here is you have 4 terms. And when you have 4 terms, you are factoring by grouping. Okay. Number 7 is our traditional trinomial, where our a value is 1. Okay? There's no coefficient other than 1 in front of the x squared. Now, in a minute, we are going to have to look at ones that have something other than a 1 value. But right now, we just have our 1. So, my product is always this number. When my 1 is in front of the x squared, it's always that last number. my sum in this situation, in all situations, is always my b value. So it's negative 5. Okay, because I have a positive product, I do not have a positive product, I'm sorry. Because I have a negative product, what kind of numbers am I looking for? Because I have a negative product, what are the only two numbers, what type of number will give me a negative product? Same signs or different signs? Different signs, okay? So I'm looking for one positive number and I'm looking for one negative number because that is the only way that I can get a negative number. The only way that when I multiply two numbers together that I get a negative number is that one of them has to be negative, okay? When I add one positive and one negative together, my sum is going to take the sign of the bigger absolute value. So in this situation right here, my bigger absolute value is going to be negative. Okay? So I'm going to start looking for some numbers. So I'm going to say 2 and 12, and I'm going to make the 12 negative because my sum's negative. Okay? If I add those together, am I going to get negative 5? Nope. 4 and negative 6. 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. When I add those together, am I going to get negative 5? Okay. What about 3 and negative 8? 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. When I add them together, do I get negative 5? I do. So that's my answer right there. X plus 3, X minus 8. Now the reason I'm allowed to go directly from here to here is because of this 1. As soon as I do not have that 1 there, I can't do that anymore. As soon as I don't have that 1 there, I can't do that anymore. Okay? Okay. Now, number 8, we don't have a 1 there anymore. We have 9y squared minus 12y plus 4. Okay? 9y squared minus 12y plus 4. Okay? So, I have a number right here. 9 is in front of my y squared. What do I do to get my product? Good, excellent. I multiply my a and my c value. So 9 times 4 is 36. Good, and that's a positive number. Okay, what's my sum? Excellent, negative 12. Okay, now, I have a negative sum and I have a positive product. When I have a positive product, I have to have a positive number times a positive number or a negative number times a negative number. My sum is negative, so what can you tell me about my two numbers? Good. I'm looking for both numbers to be negative. That's what I'm looking for right there. Both numbers are negative. Okay? So I'm going to start multiplying things that are 36. I've got negative 9 times negative 4. That does not give me a sum of negative 12. It gives me a sum of negative 13, which is close, but that's not it. What about negative 6 and negative 6? Does that do it? Good. Okay, so here are my numbers right here. Now, I split that b value. So I have 9y squared minus 6y minus 6y. Okay, so all I've done is I've split that negative 12 to the two numbers that I found. Okay, Split that negative 12. Now I've got 4 terms, so I factor by grouping. Okay, what comes out of the first 2 numbers? What goes into 9 and negative 6? 3. What else goes into y squared and y? Excellent. Okay, so then I'm left with 3y minus 2. Is that right? Good. Okay, now, whenever I have a negative number right here, whenever I have a negative number right there, what is that an indication that I need to do? What do I need to take out? Excellent, Matthew. If I have a negative for that term right there, that is an excellent indication that I need to take a negative out. So I am actually taking out a negative 2 right here, not just a 2. Okay, so then I'm left with positive 3y and negative 2, which is exactly what I wanted. Okay, so I've got 3y minus 2 times 3y minus 2. Now, you may or may not realize that those are exactly the same. So could I write this as 3y minus 2 squared? Could I do that? Yes, I could. Yes, I could. Okay. Number 9 is what kind of gave everybody fits. Okay. Number 9 made us a little bit uncomfortable because we had some pretty large numbers. So 15z squared plus 8z minus 16. Okay? Now, 15 is kind of a large number, and so it would have been reasonable to see if there was a GCF. It would have been reasonable to see if there was a number that was common to 15, 8, and negative 16. There's not, but it's reasonable to look and see. Okay? So, to get my product, I'm going to do 15 times 16. And again, if we've forgotten how to multiply, I'm going to have 15 times 16. Whoops, that's not going to be helpful. Let's do it this way. 15 times 16. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. We put our placeholder there. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1. So we end up with 240. Now, is that a positive 240 or a negative 240? It is negative because it's positive 15 times negative 16. Okay, so I have a negative 240. So that means I'm looking for one positive number and one negative number. Okay, what's my sum? Good. Positive 8. So which number is going to have the higher absolute value? Positive or negative? Positive. Good. Okay, now, negative 40 seems like a very big number. Okay, but it's not terrible. It's a multiple of 10. Okay, so because it's a multiple of 10, I'm going to start there. So I'm going to say positive 10. Nope, I'm going to say negative 10 because my bigger absolute value is going to be positive, and positive 24. Okay, so I'm going to start there. Okay, I already know that 16 and 15 multiply together to give me negative 240. Is 24 even? Is that? Yes. Okay, so that's an indication that 2 will go into 24. So if 2 goes into 24, what number goes into 240? 12 does. You're right. Usually the number that students pick up on is the 20. That 20 goes into 240 or negative 240. So when we do have that 20 times negative 12 is what gives us that negative 240. So that is kind of the harder thing. So always check your 10s, your 20s, and your 30s to see if it goes in. So again, I'm going to split this middle term. So I'm going to have 15z squared positive 20z minus 12z minus 16. Okay. A 5 comes out of both of those, a 5 and a z. Okay, so then I'm left with z plus 4. Nope, I'm not left with z plus 4. What am I left with? 5 times what gives me 15? Yes, 3z, good. Then 5z times what gives me 20? Good. Okay, what does that negative 12z indicate? What do I have to do? Yes, take out a negative. Okay, and 4 goes into both of these, is that right? And I'll be left with positive 3z and positive 4. So I think that was probably the hardest one. Do you see what I just did? I made it an x. Okay? Okay. Now, number 10 is one of those that we don't always think about. And this is what we have to be able to identify. We have to be able to identify this right here when we're going backwards, when we're factoring. 9 is perfect, and x squared is perfect. They are perfect squares. What does that mean? What can I take from a perfect square? Good. 64 is a perfect square. And there's one more thing that has to happen for me to be able to factor this. What does it have to have? A negative, okay? It has to be a minus. Okay? If that's not a subtraction sign or minus, we can't do it. Okay? This is a plus b and a minus b. That's how we're going to do that. So first, what is the square root of 9? What's the square root of 9? 3. What's the square root of x squared? Good. What's the square root of 64? 8. Okay, so I'm going to write this down twice. Okay. One of them has to be what, and the other one has to be what? Excellent. Positive and a negative. Now remember, that only works when you've got two perfect squares subtracted by each other. Okay? Okay, can I go to the next screen? Okay, now I am at number 11. In number 11, we are now solving. How do I know I am solving? Good, it's equal to 0. The directions also say solve, but it is equal to 0. Okay, so I've got x squared minus 2x minus 24. It's already set equal to 0. It's already set equal to 0. So, this is my sum, and this is my product. So my product is negative 24. My sum is negative 2. Because my product is negative, I'm going to have one positive number and one negative number. One positive number and one negative number. My sum is negative, so my larger absolute value is going to also be negative. So we've done 24 already. It was 8 and 3, right? Did that work? So 3 and then negative 8, because my larger absolute value's got to be negative. Does that work? 3 plus negative 8? Nope. What were other factors? 6 and 4. Which one's got to be negative? Good. Does that work? Okay, how about we do this way? 4 and negative 6. Do they work? It does. Okay? So because this is a 1 right here, I can just write it. I can do x plus 4, x minus 6. And those are equal to what? What are they equal to? Good. Now I put x plus 4 is equal to 0, and x minus 6 is equal to 0. Okay? When I have x plus 4 equals 0, when I subtract 4 from both sides, what does my x equal? Good. Here I add 6 to both sides, and I get x equals 6. What do you notice about these numbers and these numbers? What do you notice about them? They're opposite. And if you take 144, we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about this right here being a factor and this right here being a solution, and they're reversed. Okay. Now, my students love to make number 12 harder than it is. Okay? Number 12 is actually pretty easy. Okay. Now, this is not in perfect factored form, but is this set equal to 0? Yes. And are these factors? Okay? It's already factored out. Okay? This factored form is not perfect, but it's already factored out. All you've got to do in this situation right here is put x equal to 0 and 80 plus 10x equal to 0. Okay? You don't have to multiply that out because it's already equal to 0. If it wasn't already equal to 0, then you would have to multiply it out. Okay? But it's not already equal to 0. But it is set equal to 0. So all we got to do is set each factor equal to 0. X equals 0, we're already done. Here, I'm going to subtract 80 from both sides. I get 10x equals negative 80. Divide both sides by 10, and I get x equals negative 8. So my answer to this is x equals 0 and x equals negative 8 are my two answers. Okay? Now, we're going to do word problems next week, so you do not need to worry about word problems on the test. They'll be on our next test. The best thing to do are these practice tests. Okay? Anything I can do for you guys? Yes?